Hello everybody, welcome back. In our last episode we left Zetland or Shetland-born artist John Irvine having moved from Scotland to Australia in 1859, setting up a studio in Melbourne, offering his services to the public of Adelaide for a short time in 1862, and then moving to Dunedin in 1863 and placing this ad in the local newspaper. And now, despite the advertisement declaring he would only be practicing his profession for a short time in Dunedin, Irvine's time here would ultimately amount to a quarter of a century. Perhaps a reason for staying put, or maybe a reason for coming to New Zealand in the first place, was that the Irvine's son, William, by then aged in his mid-20s, was unwell, and on the 28th of October 1863 he became a resident of Dunedin's newly opened mental health facility, or lunatic asylum as it was then called. James Hume and his wife Mary became keeper and matron of the asylum shortly after William became a patient there. Although Mary passed away in 1867, the Irvine's association with the Humes appears to have continued for some time, as William's psychiatric disorder was deemed incurable, and he would remain a patient at the Dunedin Asylum and its successor at Seacliff until his death in 1890. The Humes lived at Park House, near the asylum, and in the 1870s the Irvines also lived nearby, having moved from down near the harbour up to what was then known as Albert Street. This view of Park House has a faint note on the back which suggests it was a gift from the artist in 1876, possibly to the daughters of James Hume, one of whom donated the painting along with the two portraits of her parents to the museum in 1932. Now, 1876, the year the Park House painting was likely given to the Humes, was also the year the Otago Art Society, New Zealand's first art society, was founded. John Irvine became the society's first president. He contributed many works to the society's annual exhibitions over the next 7 or 8 years, and also gave items to the society to seed a reference library. He held the post of Art Society President until 1879, resigning in the wake of the death of his wife, who had passed away in October 1878. This view of early Dunedin attributed to Irvine was gifted to the museum in 1927 by the Dunedin Public Art Gallery Society, which in the 1920s incorporated the Art Society. The Society also gave a picture of Sir Walter Scott. Irvine was a fan of the writings of Sir Walter Scott and had painted scenes based on one of Scott's novels. So perhaps the picture of Scott is one of the items Irvine originally contributed to the Art Society for its library back in the 1870s or 1880s. But getting back to Irvine's portraits, a handwritten inscription on the back of this portrait of Agnes Cowie suggests it was painted by Irvine in Dunedin in 1864. It would be logical to assume that the matching portrait of her husband Dr. Robert Cowie was also the product of John Irvine's paint box and easel. Like the Irvines, the Cowies were Shetland Islanders. Robert trained as a surgeon in Edinburgh. The pair married in Australia in 1859 when Robert would have been about 43 and Agnes about 28. They started a family before moving to Otago and settling in Dunedin in 1862. But in 1863, their eldest child, 3-year-old Robert, passed away. Another of the Cowies' children would also die young. In 1883, 3 years after her father, Euphemia Cowie passed away aged 12. Like Agnes Cowie's portrait, Christiana Shand's picture is attributed to John Irvine courtesy of his name being handwritten on the back. And again, like Agnes Cowie, Christiana had married an older man. When she became William Shand's second wife in 1851, he was 52, and she was literally half his age at 26. Some of the other portraits John Irvine painted in the first few years following his arrival in Dunedin were of leading religious and political figures, This painting of John Hyde Harris, who was provincial superintendent when the Irvines arrived in Dunedin, was perhaps based on this photograph. Harris was one of the promoters of the New Zealand exhibition held in Dunedin in 1865, and he lent the portrait for display in the exhibition's Fine Arts Gallery. In the late 1860s, the Irvines lived just across the street from Arthur Burns and his family, and these portraits of Arthur and Sarah Burns again have old inscriptions on the backs that suggest they are the work of John Irvine. These are clearly not as polished as some of Irvine's other works, and are thought to possibly be preparatory works for larger portraits. Irvine is also known to have painted Arthur's father, Reverend Dr. Thomas Burns, and while there are no clues as to the artist behind this pair of portraits of Thomas Burns and his wife Clementina, it's tempting to speculate that once again Irvine was the one waving the brush. John Irvine spent the last 2 or 3 years of his life largely confined to his bed, old and frail, but reportedly happy. He passed away in 1888 at the age of 83. In his obituary, he was remembered for his kindliness of disposition and extreme modesty, and for being sensitive to a degree. Art never had a more devoted nor more loving disciple, and everyone who knew him loved him, it said. And on that note, we'll say see you next time, and thanks for watching.